And we're live. So this is the GenapSys. Are we okay to start?
Yes.
Alrighty. So this is the GenapSys study case study meeting. Looking at the group discussion stuff. I'll just read aloud the following at the beginning. It says, so far in this course, we have seen a few common threads and takeaways. Founders matter. Experience, passion, and vision shape the business and can make the difference between success and failure. Business plan at the founding stage of the company is a collection of hypotheses, in other words, guesses. Startups create value by systematically testing hypotheses and making changes to the plan when the test results indicate a need to change. Early tests tell us a lot about the viability of a business and where more information is needed. Previous cases analyzed business models the founders had already chosen. Now we get to see a company at the moment of choice. So first we have to vote which business model option do you favor. After looking at everything, initially I thought traditional because it seemed the safer route, but after going through everything, I would have voted for razor and razor blades option. Rachel, what would you have voted for?
Yeah, actually, reading through the study, I wouldn't go with the traditional, but it was really hard to choose between the razor and the data analytics because I could really see where the data analytics could really be profitable, but I think it'd be hard to control all the information that they were trying to, kind of control. Anyway, so I also decided to go with the razor and razor blades because it seemed to be the safer of the two and not so cash needed. So,
Shirley, how would you vote?
I was having a toss-up between traditional and the razor and razor blades because with looking at the Excel document, I'm not sure I understood it right, but if I did, I thought the traditional had, it looked like it was going to, break even sooner. And also, so I went with traditional for that reason because it looked like they'd be able to pay back their initial funding faster, which investors like.
Did you get that off of the Excel exercise?
Yeah, if I did it right. I'm not sure that I did. So.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of working on that, and my sheet, like that last worksheet they talk about, it looks a little different than theirs, and so I was a little confused on it. But the numbers you got, how did you manipulate those numbers?
Well,
you just played around and saw?
Yeah, I just played around with it, and I changed some of I didn't really change any of the revenues, but I changed some of the test cartridges because the ranges they did to see how it affected it. And
okay.
Yeah, I could do probably a lot more playing with it if I understood it better.
Yeah, it was a tough one to figure out.
Yeah, sounds like sounds like we're all kind of working on this whole cash flow curve thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I actually between the three options, I thought that it would be possible maybe to do both of them, starting with one and then going to the other. On page 12, one of the guys talked about, where does it say? It says, it talked about doing a hybrid strategy with elements from different models, start with one and with the long-term goal of pursuing another. And I thought that starting with the razor blade technology, or the razor and razor blades business model, and then kind of leaning towards the data analytics, I thought that would probably be the way to go, long term, have that. Because, I mean, there's no reason why you wouldn't be able to start putting in place the foundation to collect data analytics. Granted, they'll probably be a little bit later than certain companies, but by growing a customer base, they'd be able to kind of, in the long run, implement that data analytics plan. I know on the worksheet, the data analytics after year 6 pays off huge. So I don't know that they couldn't work on, within that first 6 years, at some point work on the data analytics side. So I would actually vote for a hybrid between the two, but if I had to, I would go Razor and
I would
Razor
have
Blades.
too if it was a choice, if they gave us that
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, if they could kind of combine the two somehow, but I just stuck with the choices. So
Yeah. So I guess, and I guess, so we've discussed that one because it says discuss the one if nobody votes, but we went over data analytics. So
I guess my biggest worry with the traditional was that even if they get cash positive sooner, it just seemed like in the case study that the bigger companies would retaliate on them. So it might even give them a chance to even get to that point, because it might just squash them out from the very beginning. And that was my biggest worry on that one, because I could really see that happening. So
yeah,
these bigger established companies are really profitable, and so they would totally undercut their prices and then just kind of make them go bankrupt really quick.
Yeah, I thought about that too, and I also thought about that the founders themselves, one of the things that they want to do for their personal goals is change medicine. And I knew that traditional wouldn't do that, so they wouldn't be as excited about it, but I was just looking at it from the investor standpoint, so I guess I shouldn't have done that.
Well, but in these cases, you're putting yourself in their shoes, so your core value is going to be a little different too. I know that data analytics, it really kind of fed into what they wanted to do, but it was a little bit more. It would have taken more capital. Thinking about changing medicine and making it more, making it easier, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if a choice is left without, okay, we've done that. Specifically for each alternative, discuss the following: number of potential customers. Well, data analytics would give you eventually a higher number of potential customers. I think Razor and Razor Blades would be in the middle.
Yeah.
And traditional, you'd probably and eventually have a fewer number of potential customers because of the price that you'd be selling the device at.
Yeah, I was kind of along the same lines. Traditional, you got that first initial, like 2,000, I think is what they estimated it for. Just because, one, you have to get those established companies that already have one to actually switch over yours. And so sometimes they're not going to do that. So the number for traditional is fewer. And I thought the same for Razor. They are going to a new market, so it will expand it. But it won't be as, I guess, potential customer base-wise as the data analytics, because that could be huge. So.
Yeah, because the data analytics kind of has, well, as far as paying customers, it's not the ones who get your device. It would be the ones who are paying for the data. And
yeah.
And when I was looking at the case, it looked like there were about 6 potential customers that they listed. And for the Razor and Razor Blade, they had 8 potential customers.
And also, when you think about I think a lot of the hospitals and the clinics that would be able to take advantage of the prices at the razor and razor blades, I mean, they're going to be able to affect, all of the potential patients for those hospitals and globally too. I know data analytics, you could potentially be selling, or, they'd have individual consumers possibly taking advantage of their service as well. But if you've got a revenue stream, or if you've got an option of a hospital, I mean, just myself, if I don't go to a hospital, I would never become a potential customer to them anyway. So just the individual consumer side might not give you as many potential customers. It says, which customers would be expected to pay for the product for each of the models?
Well, in traditional and razor and razor blade, it would be the purchasers of the units and the test cartridges would be expected to pay. On the data and analytics, it would be the buyers of the data that were paying for it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one of them did admit that they're a technology development company and downstream analytics isn't our core focus today. So that would be kind of a drawback for that one. So, who are the competitors and what would their likely response be? I believe in the data analytics side, there wasn't really any competition, I think they mentioned. So they would be potentially first to market.
They were, because it said it in there that they would have first mover advantage.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, first mover. Good term. So they could potentially be the first one for that one. I know that traditional, they mentioned at least two companies. Was it Illumina and I forget the other one?
Life Technologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, Life Tech, that's it.
So, and those were pretty big. That's kind of a Dropbox situation where they were getting there a little bit late.
Yeah, and the possible responses they said for those two is that they could drop their prices or they could introduce incentives to keep their customers.
Yeah. So now we need to talk about we've kind of talked about the founders' goals in relation to the first three. They weren't really in the beginning. I know, again, in page 12, it talked about how they considered themselves a technical development company, not necessarily a downstream analytics company at that point. But ultimately, data analytics was kind of feeding into what they were trying to do, which was change the way medicine was administered to the world. It seemed to me that razor and razor blades option kind of fed in more to making genome mapping available to the masses, which it seemed that was kind of their goal. So I thought maybe the option number 2 was the better, reflected their goals a little bit more. I don't know what you guys thought about that.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, is that, he wanted to use this education and his background to go and help other people access this, because right now only the bigger companies could buy the machine, but then if he could reach out to these other markets, because it was so cheap, the hospitals could get it, which then more people that could get their hands on it would then go and start changing it to the things to change medicine down the line and how it was used. So that's why I think also number 2 option was kind of going along with the founders' goals best.
What about the investors' goals?
Investors' goals are to get a good return on their money as soon as possible.
Yeah, so that one, obviously
The data
data
analytics
analytics.
probably wouldn't help them in that regard.
No, because it'll be closer to 10 years before they would see a really good return.
Yeah.
I thought possibly the traditional might bring that about. I thought the traditional might be a little bit more attractive. Shirley, you're ultimately which option was it? The traditional or the razor blades that got them quicker date of positive cash?
The traditional, because
The traditional.
yeah,
Just because it was more expensive to start with. Yeah.
Yeah. Because traditional went positive in about 3 years, in about 3 years, and the razor blade looks like it.
Is that 5.5?
About, yeah, well, farther than that. So it looks like about 2,000. So it's about what, 9 years, I think.
Oh, okay. So traditional was much more attractive.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So now it says use a polling tool that allows students to vote and see the overall results. I don't know what they're talking about there. Go through the following questions using the Excel model you created before class. So the question is, if we increase EBIAT/sales and hold everything else equal, time to payback. I put increases. I don't know. Shirley, did you what?
If you increase just the EBIT
and hold everything else equal? It says time to payback. I guess paying.
It looks.
Does that increase?
Same. Let me look at that again.
Or does it remain the same?
As on the original, on tab 1.
Uh-huh.
The original that they had us put in there at 5, 5, and 25, because you can see payback happens in. If you're looking at cumulative, that would be in you'd go year 6. So if you just increase it, what does it shortens the payback, because then you have in year 3, you've got a positive cumulative.
Oh, because you increased. Because I know one of those we increased it and it actually pushed the payback out, and I thought we increased the EBIAT, but maybe we did the other thing.
So it decreases the time to payback, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's earnings before interest and taxes. That's what that.
Before interest and taxes, or before interest and after taxes?
It's after taxes.
Yes, sorry, yeah, and after. Yeah.
All right. So then the second one, it says if net operating assets/sales increases cash flow, I put decreases. Because isn't that lowering? That's increasing the amount of. What did everybody else put?
I also put decreases.
Okay. Shirley, did you have an answer to that one?
Oh, did we lose it?
Shirley, can you hear us still? Shirley?
Pause.
Uh-oh, I think we lost her. Oh yeah, she's frozen.
Yep, I think so.
She might have to come back. All right. So the next thing, the curve for some reason, my computer isn't pulling that up, but it says on the curve below, which segment represents the highest burn rate?
Okay, I was wondering because I couldn't see it either. So you can't.
Oh yeah. Do you have that broken window icon?
Correct. Yeah, that's what I have.
So I couldn't answer that. I have we have another computer in here. My wife used to use it for work, so I was going to see if it worked on that, but I haven't gotten to doing that yet. So I guess we will skip that one. Maybe if Shirley gets back, we'll be able to consult her on that. So now it says, discuss as a group, what strategies have we seen that flatten or lengthen the cash flow curve? Specifically, try to draw the cash flow curves for John's products, Rent the Runway, and Dropbox as they were described in the cases. Just make a rough guess as to the shapes of each of these cash flow curves. I thought that the Dr. John's products cash flow curve would be pretty steep because it seemed like they were starting to make a lot of money pretty quickly. And they were making changes as they went. So it seemed that their date of positive cumulative cash would be a little bit sooner than Dropbox, because Dropbox had a ton of they had to spend a ton of money, and even Rent the Runway. But the thing is, the Rent the Runway, their income is somewhat limited. It's going to be kind of a constant. Like if you have 60% of your inventory out all the time, that income is going to be pretty. You can only have as many customers as dresses that you have, whereas like Dropbox or Dr. John's, I mean, the more people get into it, the more people buy your product, the more you make. You could make more money next month. I don't know what you thought.
Correct. Yeah, the Rent the Runway is the only way to expand was to then buy more inventory or buy more accessories or something. So they're, having to spend more money to make more money at that point. Whereas Dropbox, you spend all the money up front to make your product, but then when people buy it, then it will go to cash flow fairly quickly. So
got it. It says, next, describe to each other what would happen to Dr. John's if they had decided to build an independent company rather than get acquired. What activities would John have had to do differently? What impact on the cash flow curve would these activities have? Flatten or steepen, shallow or deepen, increase or decrease time to payback. I think that if they had decided to build an independent company, time to payback would have increased because, once the company got sold, they could immediately pay back, right? And it sold, and it was like, what, 2 or 3 years after that they sold. So the cash flow curve would have flattened a little bit, and it probably would have gotten a little bit shallower, just because they would have been there. They would have had to get more capital. Probably they would have had. Shirley, are you back? Hey, she's back.
Yeah, she's back.
My computer froze. Everything just crashed.
Yeah, you were frozen, so we're like, oh, I think we lost her. So.
Sorry. So Shirley, we kind of moved on, but I want to ask you. There's a curve, a picture. There's supposed to be a picture of a curve with burn rates in the group discussion questions.
And neither
Rachel and I can't. Our computers aren't letting us see that picture. I was wondering if you could see that when it talks about segment A, B, B, C, C, E, and E, F.
Oh no, I couldn't see that either. It didn't show.
Okay.
Okay. Wrong.
So we will. Yeah. So we decided to forego that one. So we are on the last 5 discussion questions, and we were on number 2, talking about Dr. John's. If they had decided to build an independent company, how would that have affected their cash flow curve? and we kind of were along the lines of thinking that it would have increased their time to pay back to the investors, and it would have probably caused their cash flow curve to flatten a little bit. If you had any thoughts, I don't know on that.
I don't know. I almost have everything open again, so I can follow along.
Sorry?
I think she's getting everything back up again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll go to number 3. So it says, discuss the same for Rent the Runway. If the founders of RTR had been able to convince the dress designers to retain ownership of the dresses, what impact would that have had on RTR's cash flow curve? Flatten or steepen, shallow or deepen, increase or decrease time to payback?
Well, I think that would have decreased the time to pay back because the dress owners were taking most of that cost up front, and they weren't having to deal with that. They wouldn't have had to buy the inventory and everything. So I think the time to pay back would have decreased a lot. And then I think it still would have flattened the curve because they're not having to dig so deep buying that inventory to then go back up and get cash flow positive. That's my.
Would that have steepened? Would that have steepened the curve a little bit?
I think it would steepen it after they paid back, because then you have, just more of an increase because you don't have the dresses to purchase.
Yeah, I guess, okay. So I'm thinking of it wrong. Steep is like the curve up.
Yeah.
The part below.
So
yeah, so I would agree it does steepen because it would go, a lot quicker that way. So.
Yeah, so they'd have their overhead would have gone way down. Now, on the other hand, for the designers, that probably would have steepened their curve a little bit, just because now they've got to deal, the responsibility of, now the dry cleaning and all that still would have been RTRs, but that would have added to overhead for shipping and everything for the designers. And I can see why the designers would not have wanted that option.
Correct.
It's kind of the same as a distributor.
And they would have had to warehouse all the dresses too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same. If you think about Blockbuster Video, back when they had video stores, I don't think anybody would have none of the distributors would have wanted to own all of the videos and have Blockbuster tell them where to mail them or something like that. Of course, they're going to want, with Netflix has to have, inventory. They're not going to just, Paramount's not going to keep all their DVDs and then ship them to wherever Netflix tells them to go. It says, so the next one, what decisions did Drew Houston make in Dropbox that favorably impacted the cash flow curve?
I mean, I guess that one, he had the free accounts to that certain storage space or whatever, but then the other ones, they had to, buy subscription to it for the excess amount. And then, I don't know, in that one, I said that they should have gone the business route and done that too. But so I think that was his decision to, to make their money back really quickly, was to do that subscription pricing thing.
I like the incentive plan they put in place, or the referral program, I think, where people, if the referrer got some storage and the person that got referred got storage, I thought that was a good incentive. We've seen that banks are giving away money. You can get DirecTV. I'm a DirecTV customer, and they're always talking about, if you refer somebody, you can get like as much as $100 off your account, and they can get money off their account. So that's always a good. I thought that incentive was pretty smart to try to just to increase your word of mouth marketing tool.
Yeah, that marketing tool went a lot better than what they were trying before.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The paid advertising.
Yeah.
Shirley, anything to add?
And I think that he kept it simple because he didn't make lots of changes. So, because if he had kept changing things and making different prices, it would have impacted his cash flow because he would have needed more money to implement them. And since he didn't do that, he didn't need the extra cash.
Yeah, that's a good point. I forgot about, where he was considering doing special features for a certain type of person using it. But he did keep it simple. So.
Alrighty, number 5. Now let's look at the choices GenapSys has from a cash flow standpoint for each business model option under consideration. Compare the following. Number 1, net present value. If some of the options have similar NPVs, which is riskier, and is it advisable to take additional risk for a similar NPV?
Okay.
Sorry, I had to reset something.
On
So,
tab 3,
go ahead.
On tab 3 of the Excel document, it talks about the net present value for each one of them.
The financing implications?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like traditional strategy, let's see, net present value, data analytics had the highest. Traditional was second, and razor and razor blades was third. From years 1 to 10.
Are similar though.
Yeah. From years 1 to 10, free cash flow traditional strategy was in the positive. The other two were negative, although razor blades was relatively low.
Yeah.
And then from terminal value over the long run, data analytics was by far the highest. And razor blades is right in the middle there. See if I can get back to my, there it is. So if some of the options have similar NPVs, which is riskier. So looking at, I would say that razor blade and traditional are pretty similar. And razor blades is probably a little bit riskier, just because traditional, they kind of know what they're getting into, but given the profitability and the potential for growth in razor blades, I would think that would be a little bit better of an option.
It could be. It just doesn't show us that it has as much of a free cash flow.
Yeah.
And the present value isn't as high, and
yeah.
Yeah, that one's, I mean, like you said, Jeremy, that one's kind of hard to, the razor and blade option does have a risk because you don't know if all these other markets are really going to accept it. But in the traditional, I still feel like it's risky as well, just because of the history of what the companies have done in the past when someone comes with a lower price and then they undercut that price to kind of get them out. But
yeah, they kept their prices low just until that business went out, and then they raised their prices.
So I don't know, it's hard to tell me which one's riskier at that point. So
I mean, traditional, you can look at who owns the machines, and you can kind of try to predict who's going to buy the machines, and you can, estimate maybe if we offer this machine, which is drastically cheaper, it's going to be an attractive option. On the other hand, there is the case where one of those companies did lower their prices just to beat out a competitor. So even though you kind of have a known path where you could go it is full of competitors.
Yeah, but hopefully with that first one getting cash flow positive a lot more quickly, hopefully you just make it. So doing the traditional.
So the next one is, how will GenapSys raise funds to support each option? Is any option clearly more attractive to investors? And it says, support your answers in your discussion. I think Shirley pointed out that the traditional would be more attractive to investors because there's a quicker payback time. Was that right?
It appears that it is, but that's, with it, because if you go on tab 2 and just, reset to initial values, just the way it gives it to you, and you go back to 3, then you get to see the curves. Anything you change on 2 is reflected on 3.
Yeah.
Changes 3. I know on 3 I already have. Yeah, on 3 it looks like the way they have things set, you're looking at 2019 for traditional, and you're looking at
at 2019
just shy of.
On traditional, let's see that the where it goes to 0 is right about 2016.
Oh wait, no, it's 2016, right?
2016, yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at the wrong one. And then the other one is like just about 2022.
Correct.
Yeah, just a little after that.
Yeah.
And the last one.
So I think that would definitely be more attractive to investors. I was thinking that the only way that you'd be able to attract them to, let's say, the data analytics was if you were to get people that were long-term minded and show them the potential payout. Because if you look at 2023 for the data strategy, or 2024, it's kind of the same as traditional, but you've got potentially more customers, but I don't know that they would go for that.
Yeah, but, sorry, I was just saying with the data analytics too, they had mentioned that the investors will really need to have really deep pockets. And so they'd really have to put a lot of faith into that one to work, because they'd have to, put all this cash into it first and then wait, until 2024, right, to get their return to start increasing.
About 2023, somewhere in 2020, between 2022 and 2023 is when it would change to positive.
Oh, well, yeah, but like by 2024, that's skyrocketing all of a sudden.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and sometime beginning of the year.
If they're successful, because this is an unproven business plan right now, because they're going to be the first mover. And what some of the cons that could be that they need to think about was patient privacy was a big concern.
Yeah.
And data ownership, because although with selling their unit and the test at cost, or maybe even leasing the unit, they still have to get those companies to give them a copy of their data. And so who is going to say who owns the data? Just because GenapSys gets the copy, are they the owner of the data, or is the company that took it the owner of the data?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole can of worms you have to open.
Yeah. Plus that one, I think they said it just cost more in, was it getting overhead just to kind of operate it and stuff like that. So.
Yeah.
And then it says, for each option, how much of the company will the founders have to give up to reach the goal?
So I think in traditional, they don't have to give up that much because, they've already got this funding to get it started. And then all they have to do is give it to the companies that are looking for it right now. But then obviously they would need to generate more money for the second and third option. And so they'd have to give up more just to generate more income to make it work.
On tab 3 on the Excel doc, it has a place for us to figure it out. I was a little stuck there. Did you guys get that figured out? It's right below the graphs.
Below what?
And
Right
C, is that what you're looking at?
On tab 3, the
Just below
financing implications. Right below the graphs, where it
Yeah.
says, assume you have found an investor willing to invest at 20 million valuation, pre-money. So does pre-money, does that mean before you collect any money? That's just what your business has the potential? That's what it's valuated at?
It's asking how much capital you'd need to raise for each strategy. And this is going to be the only round of financing.
Right.
I actually hadn't I hadn't had the chance to do that part yet.
Because if you figure out that part, then it goes right into B, and that'll give you how much the founders have to give up of their company.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I hadn't gotten to that point either yet.
Because I looked at it, I just wasn't
I got the other
sure
stuff.
how to do it.
Oh, well, that's playing with the numbers in Model 2, right?
It could be.
So I think if you go to tab 2,
because I know up at the top it just told us to. Maybe it's tab 3.
So is there a place where you can put in the 20 million, that number? Yeah, the tutorials were kind of helpful, but at the same time there was a bit of vagueness to them.
Yeah.
I think that I think Rachel's right. Traditional, you're going to have to give up less just because it's going to cost less. You wouldn't have to raise as much money. I think with each option, there's a growing amount of capital you're going to have to raise, and with that, there's a shrinking amount of the company that you're going to retain for yourself.
Well, yeah, I agree to that too, because I just put some numbers in. I just made something up. I didn't know it was the right thing to put in there, and each one was they had to give up more of the company.
Yeah. I mean, the data analytics side, you run the risk of having a board of directors that if they don't, if they're not happy with you after a few years, you run the risk of getting fired. So that, that is, while there is a big upside to the data analytics, you also run the risk of putting yourself in a position where you might not be in charge of your company anymore, depending on how things go.
Or opening yourself up to more liability and lawsuits if there's, fighting over who owns what. So
yeah. And if you're not careful with the patient data, because then you run into privacy issues, which could open yourself up to more lawsuits.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, put yourself in the shoes of Isfandiapur, Rastegar, and the investors. You must decide as a group which business model you will choose. Be ready to explain this choice in your post-discussion write-up. So I would have chosen the razor and razor blades model because of the number of potential customers, the potential to, it's not traditional. The time to payback would have been longer, but there's fewer competitors. And it kind of still goes along with their core value of fundamentally changing the way that healthcare is delivered to patients. So I would have voted to choose that model.
Correct. That's what I would have gone with as well. Just to give access to more people. And then that goes along with what his goal was, is to get this information to more people so that they could take that information and do more tests with it and do all that to, just kind of make medicine grow. And then, so it's not as risky as the data analytics. And so I think even though it's not cash flow positive as early as the traditional would, I think it would still give them a better chance at not going bankrupt. So that's why I would pick number 2.
As long as they're able to sell enough, because they have to scale quickly in order to break even, then number 2 would also be a good choice. Because besides the medical fields, there's a lot of other fields that could use the DNA testing things. Like they talked about biofuel companies and agribusiness that would also be interested in things for doing, DNA testing.
Got it. So Shirley, would you still go traditional, or would you do you still prefer traditional, or would you go the other route?
I think razor and razor blade might be better because, like you said, both of you said that about the competition of the incumbents, and they would probably there's a good chance they could get blown out of the water if they drop their prices.
You can tell me I'm wrong.
However, those bigger units that the big companies have probably cost a lot more than let's see, their cost is $3,000 to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would sell it for 40. Yeah.
And they're selling it for 40. I mean, that's a big difference. But the larger companies that are making the bigger machines, they cost a considerable amount more. So would they be able to drop their cost even down to 40,000?
Or eventually build a smaller, more cost-efficient model too. I will concede that is the real attractive part of traditional is it's kind of like the spin brush in that the spin brush was a $6 as opposed to a $50 machine.
Mm-hmm.
So and in their case they went with it and got acquired, but yeah, so that is a very attractive side of traditional. Alrighty, I think we've covered everything. Does anybody have anything to add before we do the summary? If not, oh, sorry. Were you going to say something, Rachel?
Nope. Go ahead.
Who would like to do the summary?
Guess is that my turn?
I think it's a little bit of it, so I don't want to summarize it.
Okay. You want to try go for it, Rachel?
Sure. Okay, so after discussing the 3 options that GenapSys has, our group has decided to vote for the razor and razor blades option for the fact that it keeps with the founders' goals of wanting to change medicine, and it gives the product more marketability as they go to hospitals and these other ag businesses, biotech companies that will use these this product to then do tests and kind of further the market that way. And plus, on looking at the cash flow curves, it doesn't return cash as flow as the traditional, but it's the safer bet because we feel the traditional one would have been crushed out by the competition that was already in place. And so we figured it was the less riskier route to do option number 2, and that they would still be profitable and the investors would still be happy with their return after, let's see if I could get the actual date here, at like 2022. So that's why we went with the option number 2. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
I think that's it. All right, I'm going to stop the recording.